Hello there, Jack. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Sam?
I'm just very excited to join the upcoming Trillion MAGA March when we form the new 13th Legion to cross the Rubicon with God Emperor Donaldus Trumpius to you know start the Fourth Reich and save our republic. That's what I'm really. Yep, that's what I believe in now. And Mike Pence, more like our Mark Antony, because that's what MAGA people are saying. They're saying that Donald Trump is going to save the republic by crossing the Rubicon. They don't understand the irony in that statement. That always bothered me.
No, it's what they say. I mean, everyone loves to say it, but those who don't learn history are doomed to repeat it. But by the look of your head, you're pretty excited for this January 6th. Give me a second. I know what it is.
Okay. We should leave this in, by the way. Don't cut this out.
Because my hair was getting in the way.
Oh, because you're a disgusting hippie.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh, it's because my hair kept rubbing against the mic. There. That's better. Now I have a man bun.
Great. Now you look like Vaush.
I have no idea who that is. So
Yes, you do. Stop pretending.
no, I mean I've never heard the name Vaush before in my life. Yeah, I keep hearing people say Vaush, Jimmy Dore, and Shank, and the names just go over my head. I don't participate in the discourse. I don't know who any of these people are.
I'm glad.
All I know is Marx, Engels, and Lenin.
I'm really glad we have a podcast now so we can explicitly not talk about those people. And I like having the choice to have a platform where you can participate in that discourse, and we're actively choosing not to. We talked about it briefly in one episode 2 episodes ago, and that's it. We're never going to talk about the name James Dore will never leave one of our voices again on this podcast.
No, we're gonna take this episode as an opportunity to discuss everyone's favorite leaving President Donald Trump and his recent run-ins with reporters and electoral authorities. Because if there's one thing we need before he leaves office is to talk about him a few more times and the amazing things he did. So you want to start us off with?
Just for more context, everybody's been laughing at the Trump legal battles that have been taking place since Biden was declared the victor. Rudy Giuliani had his face melt or whatever. People made fun of that. But now this audio got leaked about Trump saying we just need to find 11,000 votes or whatever he said to the Georgia Secretary of State. And people are outraged, and people are now worried about the January 6th. That's the day where something else happens with these electoral college votes. And if you want to go more in depth about what exactly will be happening on January 6th and whether or not the Senate can do some sort of coup and successfully steal the election from the winner of it, who is Joe Biden, and give it to the loser, Donald Trump.
So, from this point, Joe Biden has won the election 4 times. I mean, we had the day that it was announced that he had the votes needed to win. Then there was the day that the Electoral College actually voted in then it's like, okay, now Joe Biden's president. But now we actually have the certification of the Electoral College results, which historically has been like a 30-minute affair in the Senate. The vice president basically presides over reading and counting the electoral votes and certifying the election, and basically finalizing everything to say X person will become the next president of the United States. And it's never really very interesting. I mean, in the past, the interesting ones have been when the vice president had been the loser of the election. So like Al Gore had to certify the results of the election in 2000, or same with Richard Nixon in, well, what year did he lose? 1960.
Yeah, 1960 was when he lost. He was the incumbent VP and he lost to JFK.
Yeah, and he had to certify that election result. And of course, this time it's Mike Pence will have to certify that Joseph Robinette Biden did in fact win an electoral majority. But with that process, and it's happened a few times in the past, if one member of the Senate and one member of the House reject the results or like object to the count and certification, then they go into a 2-hour debate. And in that session, they like discuss both sides of it. And from there, both the House and the Senate have to take a vote on whether or not to certify the election results, and what that would require for it to be overturned, or for essentially a coup to occur in Trump's favor, would be that a majority of the House and a majority of the Senate would have to say like, oh no, this election isn't legit and we refuse to certify it, which doesn't seem likely by any stretch. And people are worried about Mike Pence and whether or not he's going to like turn against Trump, or if he's going to like fall and usher in like a new era of autocracy in America, when in all actuality, Mike Pence doesn't really have a role in this process. It's ceremonial. This entire thing is ceremonial. And the legislative bodies will more likely than not just certify the results.
And it also seems that even if he did have a role, it doesn't seem like Mike Pence wants to do it. It seems like he has accepted the results, even if he's not saying it publicly. I don't know to what extent he's talking about it publicly, but from what I've heard, he's getting pushed. He's like pushing back against like the legal efforts to change results in certain states, or to remove certain ballots. And in your like research in recent history, has like, because I know in the 2000 election, that was obviously a very controversial election, and House Democrats tried to bring to the floor the illegitimization of that election, but they couldn't get a single Senate Democrat to sign off. And I think something similar happened in 2016. So in like recent history, has this like quote unquote 2-hour debate that happens where the Senate and the House vote whether or not they're going to certify the election, has that ever happened before?
Yeah, the most recent occurrence was actually 2004 with the Kerry-Bush election, and it did end up going to a debate. And as we all know, by the fact that John Kerry was never president of the United States, Bush won handily, and the objection was not sustained. But yeah, that's really the last occurrence in recent history where there has been a successful objection to the result certification, and something maybe didn't come out of it, but there was that like debate period, and it did have to go to a vote for certification. Whether or not,
no, sorry,
it is probably going to go to a vote this time, since we have seen 11 senators and several members of the House object, but we'll have to wait and see how far that actually goes.
Yeah, it seems like it'll be very easy getting the one House member, one senator to sign on to it. The question now is like, it seems like if that does happen, both the House and the Senate will vote to confirm the election. Like the House is obviously overly Democratic, and there have been enough Republicans that have said that they've accepted Joe Biden as the winner in the Senate to not have to worry about swinging any votes.
Yeah, so Notable senators that have accepted that Joe Biden has won include Mitch McConnell, um, which I'm not saying that means it's a done deal, but if Mitch isn't on your side with whatever stupid like subversion of democracy you're trying to do, that means it's probably not going to succeed. And sorry, what was the question again? What were you saying? Because I think that ultimately, it doesn't stand a chance in either the House or the Senate for any real.
Yeah, I guess the more interesting question is like, what would potentially happen? Like the House is full of like is now full of like Trumpist true believers. So it almost seems like their careers are dependent upon this. But like the Senate has always is supposed to be seen as like a different body. It was always supposed to like sort of like curb the populist tendencies of the House of Representatives. So like for senators to start signing on to this, insane fanatical devotion to Donald Trump, probably if you care a lot about the institutions of our democracy, of like United States norms and like historical, it should probably concern you, and you should start to raise your eyebrow that like senators are now signing on to this, and really what will be the career of the senators, I guess, because they're easier to keep track of because there's only 100 of them, but your Josh Hawleys and any other senator that's going to vote to basically overturn the election results. What like will they ever face any like repercussions for doing this? Because I mean, it's essentially saying to all the people that voted Democrat, of which there's like 81 million, that your votes didn't matter.
Yeah, and I think it depends on how they decide to present this. I mean, Ted Cruz, who has been sort of a pain in the ass about all of this, he's not saying that it's not a legitimate election. He's saying that we should postpone the certification until we can do like a full accounting of any voter fraud that may or may not have possibly gone on and swayed the result of the election either way. And it's a lot of them, except for like the absolute psychos, are beating around the bush like, well, we have seen some voter fraud going on in some of these cases, or some of the recounts were actually different from the initial tabulations, so we should figure that one out. But in actuality, they are effectively trying to overturn the election or draw doubts about like the results. And I think probably the funniest thing about it is 4 or 5 of the 11 senators that are like trying to reject this this count were elected in the most recent election. Like they're new. They were just sworn in as senators. The same election that they're contesting is the one that they won in a lot of these states. So you have like Tommy Tuberville and his cohort objecting to election results that were favorable for them, but not for Donald Trump. And it's this sort of inherent contradiction of like, oh, we can trust these votes, but not these votes, that make it pretty obvious what the point is of all this, and really undermine their credibility as the like elder statesman or whatever Senate is supposed to be, as opposed to like the whims of the House of Representatives.
Yeah, and do you think there should be like, because I think that, while I'm not a big fan of Joe Biden, and I will never pretend to be for any reason, I still do think that he is the winner of this election. And I guess like people trying to subvert any type of democracy is bad. And so like, do you think there's any discrepancy between what I'm trying to say is I'm against the people in the House that are saying this election is fake. Like, even though I don't really like Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and I don't think there's a big difference between which one is president, I think at this point it should be Joe Biden because he won, and 81 million people voted for him. Do you think there should be like any discrepancy between the people who are raising doubts and questions, like Ted Cruz, versus the people who are just outright trying to say that the entire election was fake and or rigged or whatever?
Um, I think that there's no real difference, like pragmatically. I think they're effectively doing the same thing, but rhetorically, I think that some of them are trying to save face and will successfully save face. I mean, the one little trick I've seen Ted Cruz do over the last couple of days is as people are pointing at the new Trump tape asking for like the 11,000 votes in Georgia, being like, oh, you want your election fraud? Here's your election fraud. And then Ted Cruz comes and says like, oh, okay, yeah, you think there is fraud. I guess we'll have to delay the certification and like do an investigation to see if anyone acted poorly. But it's, again, there's the difference between I want to overturn an election and I want to buy time and disrupt the process, both of which have the same effective result and shouldn't be treated any differently by the American people.
Yeah. Since the results of Nancy Pelosi's victory aren't being contested, if there's no clear winner by January 20th, would she become president?
I'm not sure. I'd have to do a lot of research on like all of the formalities and what all of this goes to, but I, knowing the like line of succession, possibly.
Yeah, but well, like the reason why it's not clear is because she was up for reelection, and if she's up for reelection, she's also disqualified. But her election, as far as I know, isn't really being disputed by anybody. I think everybody in this country knows that Nancy Pelosi won her race. Um, if she's unqualified, it would go to Chuck Grassley. He would become president of the United States.
Yeah, everyone's favorite Dairy Queen senator. Y'all know what he did at that Dairy Queen. You can look up the tweets.
Yeah, people need to look that up for context because I'm sure you don't want to talk about it on the podcast. But anyway,
yeah, Chuck Grassley's out there. He tweets about Dairy Queen and hitting deer with his cars all the time. That's the other one is him talking about how he hit a deer with his car and then it like went away and he just kind of figured it was dead and he drove home.
He has COVID. Is he doing good? Is he back in like action?
Yes, he must be. I mean, we heard he got COVID a few months ago and I haven't heard that he's died yet. So that must mean he's probably doing all right.
That's just so crazy that like rich people are like immune from dying. Like he's like almost 90. Donald Trump had it, and he's probably the most unhealthy person like in the national image in the most unhealthy famous person. And they're fine. Like if Larry King survives, then I will know that like I will become a COVID truther because how the hell do you have these disgustingly old creeps like keep bouncing back? Was Herman Cain really just the sacrificial lamb?
I think it really comes down to when the hospitals are at capacity, only the rich can pay for.
Yeah. Chris Christie too, fat as hell. Yeah. Rudy Giuliani, also incredibly old. All these people are fine. They're in the danger zones. They're overweight. They're old. They probably breathe better having COVID than they do normally. That the virus probably has opposite effect on them because they're so unhealthy. That like I am going to become a conspiracy theorist if Larry King lies. I'm sorry. I know it's a bad look right now, but what I'm entitled to this opinion now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the crazy thing about all of this like election shenanigans going on right now is like in the background we see probably the highest rate of COVID deaths at any point in the last year going on.
I heard another 150,000 are going to die. Is what I heard.
Yeah, it's obscene. Hospitals are back at capacity and all of that. And now we have senators. Again, they were arguing over the $2,000, which now isn't happening, and instead they're putting their weight behind doing an election fraud, basically.
Yeah. I guess we shouldn't stray too much further from that, but yeah. So if they keep delaying the process, eventually, like neither Biden nor Trump will be president. And I just want to think like again, this proves how important Trump is as like a figure because he one-term presidents like are usually like book like footnotes in history books. You know, George Bush Sr., Jimmy Carter. Like by every like definition, he should like a one-term president should just be like nothing. But every people are putting their careers on the line to defend him. Like elected Republicans now have to like to have they think to have a chance with their constituents when they're up for reelection, they have to risk it all for this man who a would never do it for them. He would never put himself in like the danger for Ted Cruz or Rand Paul or Josh Hawley. He would never return the favor, and he never will to any of these people. I think that's the funniest thing.
I mean, we saw Joe Biden say that he is the Democratic Party, but whether or not that's true is debatable. But that's certainly true for Trump now. If you want to run as a Republican, you have to kiss the ring and get Trump's approval to actually manage electorally. And yeah, I think that's probably not what Mitch McConnell or Ted Cruz or any of them want, but that's the reality they have to deal with now is the fact that Trump came in out of nowhere, basically, maybe not nowhere, but like came out of left field and shook up the entire party, and now it's his party.
Yeah, that is like I don't. Someone needs we like that phenomenon can't. My head can't be wrapped around it. Nobody, um, not even Ronald Reagan or even the Clintons and the Obamas do not have the hold over the Democratic Party that Trump does. For like um, culturally as a figure, he's the most important person like ever, and there's no contest, and that's weird, right?
Yeah, I mean, he turned it into a cult of personality. I mean, if you look at how he filled out the ranks with a lot of these hacks, like Rudy Giuliani, Bill Barr, he pulled up like Jeff Sessions, all of these guys that he gave power to, and they were all pretty loyal at putting in his agenda until they weren't, and he just gets rid of them. He built this cult of personality, and I think going back to the tape that just came out of his phone call with Georgia, we know how he talks to his people, and that phone call is actually kind of funny to listen to because the what was it, the Attorney General or the Secretary of State of Georgia
Yes.
doesn't doesn't play along. He doesn't play the game, and so Trump is out there just kind of hinting at these things that he wants them to do. Like he's not going to outright say, "Hey, I want you to commit election fraud," but he's going to give like the wink and the nod and be like, "So, we're in agreement. You know what needs to be done." And the guy on the other line is like, "No, I can't conjure votes for you. I can't like pull votes out of thin air. I can't do this. They didn't replace the inside of the machines. There's nothing irregular. These are the election results, sir."
Yeah,
But
I listened to the call because part of me was like, it can't be that bad, but it was pretty bad. And the summation of it was just like Trump was just like saying, "You're a Republican. This shouldn't be like you." Like he was literally just, "You're right. It is he believes he has this cult of personality." And that's essentially what he was like, "You're a Republican. Shouldn't we just aren't we supposed to help each other out? Shouldn't you just you know, do whatever you have to do to like help me out by the very virtue that we're both Republicans?" Yeah, it's no one has ever had this hold on American politics before.
and honestly, the crazy thing about the phone call is it plays exactly like the Ukraine call, like the thing he got impeached over. It it's almost funny how similar they are in content, how it's like the wink and the nod and like the nudge, like, "Hey, you're gonna do me a favor, right? Like I shake your hand, you shake mine," like that sort of dealing. And I always think back to Senator Collins saying, like, we may not have impeached him, but at least he learned his lesson. He did not learn his lesson. That is extremely evident that in like the last days of his presidency, he is still trying to make these backroom deals that are just insane. And if he wasn't already on his way out, I would say impeach him again. Why not?
Yeah, that would be that. Well, they still can. I mean, I would be pissed off if they did because that means they weren't doing more important things. But if like, uh, again, I'm not bringing it up, but it looks like, given what's going on in the House, not going to say JD's full name, but given what's going on in the House, it sounds like they're not really doing anything else that important. So I mean, like, it would be pretty cool to like the historic to have the first president to be impeached twice.
Yeah, and if we are left with him as like a president pro tempore or whatever for like several weeks, yeah, might as well just impeach him again. This isn't like the last one where it's a transcript of this conversation and it may or may not have happened this way and you have to go through like actual levels of security clearance to know about it. This is something the Washington Post straight up released. It's damning. You can listen to it. You can try and spin it, but it's all there.
Mm.
The phone call is enough evidence in and of itself to say like, I guess presidents shouldn't be able to do this. This is abuse of power, however you want to classify it. It could very well be a high crime or misdemeanor.
Did you see that one tweet that was like a far right media guy was like, a man should never leak a conversation he has in private with another man. It's like, what's more important, fellows, the bro code or the U.S. criminal code?
Yeah, and I mean the immediate response to that is like, oh yeah, because Trump abides by like the gentleman's code. He is far and away the most like respectful and chivalrous president we've ever had, and like you can tell that he is very moral and like ethically structured his presidency around some sort of code.
Yeah. I remember fondly when Mark Twain, or I'm trying to think of the best symbol of chivalry. I can't think of any literary examples, but like when when they said I moved on her like a bitch, or I've never seen a thin person drinking Diet Coke. Like, yes, this is the pinnacle of masculinity, of a strong, virtuous, noble. That's the funniest thing. Like all the people that like were obsessed with Trump in 2016, like he's going to be the greatest defender of Western civilization. And I think in a way he is. I think I said this a few days ago. I don't remember if it was on the air or when we weren't recording, but like Trump is the Tiger King president. And he, by like going up there, eating the fillet of fish, saying like, I brought back the McRib, folks. No one, Obama didn't do it. Like that is what Western civilization is now. So in this, like he's the Chili's president. He's the Applebee's and Chili's president. And all the people that were like, we need to defend Western civilization, like, you got it. That's what he did for 4 years. He defended like big oil companies and the filet. He brought back the McRib. That's what you wanted, right? That's what he offered you, and that's what happened.
Yeah, the most American thing a U.S. president can do is like during a government shutdown, having a college football team over and serving them all McDonald's food like on silver platters because no one can work at the White House during a government shutdown.
I mean, yeah, I still like. I mean, let's face it. American cultural and political life, like all of it, is entirely defined by your opinions of him. And you can argue that there are a few politicians who achieved that status. I think Richard Nixon's a very good example. But like this phenomenon that we're in right now is like, I'll say it again, your cultural and political views are entirely informed by your opinion of Donald Trump. And I think you see that more clearly now. This was the most voted in election in history. Joe Biden got the most votes out of anybody ever in presidential history, but Donald Trump got the second most. The electoral college vote was so close. I mean, not the electoral, the popular vote was so close, so much closer than it should have been. And it's like America is like so close to a 50-50 split on how they feel about Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, he will be like the cultural touchstone of our time, and maybe when he finally leaves, we should just do an episode that's like a full retrospective. Like, hey, remember when this happened? Remember this? Just like start on day one, go through all the greatest hits. I mean, it would almost be funny to look at all of the Trump presidency if we weren't going to like hit 500,000 people dead from coronavirus in the next couple of months. But
Oh yeah, to be clear, Trump from 2015 to like December of 2019 was just a great wild ride of like hijinks.
yeah, it stopped being funny when 1 in 1,000 Americans died of COVID.
Yes, yes, I agree. And I mean, I guess some of the racist parts weren't very funny either.
Yeah, yeah, the racism wasn't very fun either.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like, yeah, no, there's no, I just keep thinking about the shithole countries comment now. Like that was like, when you heard that, you couldn't help but like laugh, but also like, oh, that's probably one of the most disgusting things he's ever said.
Well, I don't know when his book deal is coming out, but I'm gonna get to relive this good time in a few weeks. Read through the Obama book, The Promised Land. Uh,
The
can't wait to
Trump
see
book
what
will be so much better. Yes.
Trump's book is going to be a wild time. I mean, we've already seen people around him write their books, and
Are you good?
excited to see where that goes.
I can't wait to go to the the presidential museum that he's going to open. Oh, you know what? I guess we should talk about this. Given what we see going on with the election, um, it seems like the way he's still fighting it, he's almost like setting up to just run for president forever and be the 2024 Republican nominee. Do you think that's the most, because he's talked about doing a bunch of different things. He talked about leaving the country. People have said he's going to go to Mar-a-Lago and just never leave Mar-a-Lago for the rest of his life. And people talk about him just pretending he's like president and being president in exile and coming back in 2024 to put his name on all the Republican primary ballots. Do you think that's the most likely outcome?
Well, I think that the disappearing to Mar-a-Lago seemed very likely, but it was strange because he left for Mar-a-Lago for like the winter recess or whatever, and people were saying he wasn't going to come back. But a few days ago, he abruptly left Mar-a-Lago back to DC. So we're going to see where that goes, whether or not he's like an active player in DC for the next couple of weeks, months, years. But I think that, yeah, he is going to run again in 2024. And it's going to be, if you thought it was bad now, think of him like 4 years further into his like cognitive decline, like waning health. He's at that point, he's going to be like Roger Ailes.
Yes.
Disgusting monster.
When when Nixon lost in 1960, he spent the year 1966. He like took over the Republican primaries, and like spent all of 1966 working on the primary. So to lay the stage to run for president in 68, and he won. So that could be like a viable like Trump campaign strategy. Like in 2022, he finds a way to just purge all of the non-believers, all like the non-Trumpists out of the party in like House races, Senate races, governor races, because the Republicans are already set on the stage to do an amazing sweep in 2022. Like I don't think Democrats flipped a single state legislature this election cycle. They lost seats. Joe Biden won by the most impressive popular vote margin. Well, not the most impressive margin, but he got the most popular votes. And yet his party is in such a bad shape. It's probably like one of the worst wins ever, especially when you compare it to what Obama did in 2008.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And yeah, we're gonna have to keep our eye on the way things shape out. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about
Go.
Yeah, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say, like, what conceivable future does like the people always say that the Democrats are going to split because of the Bernie versus the rest of the party thing. that I don't see that happening. I think the squad, as it were, is learning to conform more to the party line. But the Republican Party splitting seems like, if you're seeing which party is more likely to do that, they seem like the more rational option. They seem like they are the ones that are most likely to split because of the Donald question.
No, I think that's absolutely true, and we're gonna have to like watch and see how all of that develops. And about to close us out, you want to give us like top 5 Trump team MVPs to watch out for in 2024?
You mean like?
Yeah, who we think is going to come back and run for president, run for Senate, become the next big GOP operators?
I think the reason Mike Pence hasn't fought back and been as vocally like trying to disprove the results of the election as like Trump or like the legal team is because he's setting up a 2024 run, and he'll be probably an early front runner by virtue of being the former vice president. And he's going to try to use like to stay like credible within mainstream audiences by not getting down in the dirt the way Donald Trump is and the way his legal team is, by like trying to essentially overthrow the results of a democratic election. I think he's because people close to Pence have known that he's wanted to be president all of his life. So I think this is him like laying the groundwork for that by proving like, see, I don't want to be a right-wing, far-right, gay murdering dictator. I'm a totally normal Republican.
Yeah. I think one of the people I think we need to look out for coming up, she's been kind of quiet through all of this, but that's Nikki Haley. I think that we're going to hear a lot from her in the coming years, especially once Trump is gone. She's going to try and pick up that mantle where he left off.
Yes, she will run the same way Pence does, if theoretically that happened, as being like, look, I was very civil and I made my disagreements with Trump clear, but I also served him and worked with him. And so they're both going to try, if either of them runs, they're going to try to do that best of both worlds. That's what they're going to offer the Republican Party. That's what they're going to offer like the media and all the mainstream audiences. I think of all the 2016 primary challengers Trump faced, I think that what's his face? Ted Cruz is the most likely to try to return. I think most of the people like Jeb Bush and Lindsey Graham and Rand Paul, they've all been successfully scared off. They're not going to try entering the race. But yes, I definitely see Ted Cruz being the one to try to make a comeback.
Yeah, I mean, you look back, I think it's funny to look at the Time covers that are like the future of the Republican Party. Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz.
Rand Paul, they wrote that Rand Paul was the most interesting man in politics in like 2014. That's the thing.
They were right.
The media is like, I'm reading Nixonland by Rick Perlstein, and they talk about that's all they did after Barry Goldwater led the conservative wing to take over the Republican Party in 1964. They lost spectacularly. And so there was like this big power vacuum. Are like the elites like going to take over? Are the conservatives going to make a comeback? This is a time when both parties still had a liberal and a conservative wing. And what essentially happened is that the New York Times was writing all these liberal Republicans up, like George Romney is perfect example. The dad of Mitt Romney was the governor of Michigan, and he was very liberal. Like he was more liberal than a lot of Democrats at the time. And they just kept writing puff pieces about him in all of like Time Magazine, the New York Times. And when it came to actually start like running the race, he got nothing, And I think that the media like has never changed since doing that. The 2020 Democratic primary is a perfect example. Look at how hard they tried to make Kamala Harris a thing, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren. The New York Times endorsed Amy Warren Amy Warren. They endorsed both Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren, and neither of them carried a single state. the media is badly out touched when it comes to like what the bases of both parties feel like moving towards.
I mean, I think the difference though between Trump and Biden in that capacity is like Biden is to some degree going to embrace a lot of the people that he beat. His Kamala Harris is as VP, Pete Buttigieg as Labor Secretary. Trump didn't pay any mind to the people he beat. He won the primary and he like eviscerated his opponents. I mean, you look at the people that he left behind. He left them in the dust. He did not care. He didn't bring any of them into his administration. Like one or two in on like an advisory capacity. The left, he just left them where they were and maybe would campaign for them 2 years later, but he like held it over their heads. And that's the thing Joe Biden's not doing. And I think that's why a lot of the people that Joe Biden beat in this primary we're going to see pop up again and again because he didn't humiliate them the way that Trump did to a lot of those Republicans.
You're forgetting the greatest leader of HUD of all time, Ben Carson.
That's true. I failed to consider Ben Carson, which maybe we'll see him run for president. Maybe Ben Carson will become president in 2024. We're all looking forward to it.
All right, but speaking of getting back to the GOP primary, I think Josh Hawley is in the news a lot. He's the Republican who did the most to try to get $2,000 checks across the and the media is writing pieces that he's the ideological heir to Trumpism because he's like, very far right on social issues, but like is willing to appeal to the left on issues of like trade and economics. And I think that he might run. And I think that if he does run, he'll come in like 5th place in Iowa. That's maybe if there still is an Iowa caucus, I don't know anymore. But in like the early states, he'll do so terribly. He'll get like very few delegates, if anything. And will prove that like once and for all, well, not once and for all, because the media will still insist it's real and Twitter idiots will still insist it's real. But like this right-wing populism thing will be dead because I think it's clear to me now that the whole right-wing populism thing was not about populism, but it was about Donald Trump.
I think it's always hard to say before it happens. Who appeals in Iowa is always up in the air. People thought it was going to be a slam dunk for like Amy Klobuchar because she's from Midwest and people in Iowa will love her. No, that didn't pan out. Same with Joe Biden. People were thinking like, oh, name recognition, he'll do fine in Iowa. No, it didn't pan out. Even then, you don't have to do well in Iowa to win other states. I think that the primary process is so muddled, confusing, and I don't know.
Antiquated for sure.
Yeah, and anything goes. Like, who knows how a primary election will go in 2024 in either party. I think it's hard to say how well anyone will do other than the fact that if they get like the Trump seal of approval or if he like actually endorses them, they will probably win and become the nominee, unless Donald Trump himself runs again, in which case he will probably again become the nominee.
Do you think it'll be a slam dunk for him? Like he'll sweep all 50 states in the primary?
Unless between like now and then he comes out as like a socialist or something, yes, he will dominate the Republican primaries.
That would be pretty intense because I think that another candidate that I could see, Mitt Romney might try to make a comeback.
He has become much more popular among moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats.
Yes, he is going to try to ride that wave of like basically the same thing his dad did, and it's like the liberal media will write tons of puff pieces about him about how he's like the new John McCain and he wants to restore civility to the Republican Party. And like I think you're right, it is impossible to predict what like will be like in 4 years from now. That being said, I think the Republican base won't change enough where they'll be like, maybe we were wrong to like defend a man who said grab them by the pussy and like maybe we should be nice to people and have like compassion. I don't think the Republican people who vote in Republican primaries are ever going to be like that in our lifetimes.
Yeah, people think that winning this election is like Phantom Menace rules, where once you destroy like the headquarters, everyone just sort of like breaks the connection and it's all over and you win. You don't have to fight anymore because you destroyed the space station. There's nothing to control them anymore.
That's, I think, the problem with like this 81 million votes mandate is like people are going to forget how good Trump did in like the popular vote. I think um, he improved when he should have done worse by all regards. He improved with everybody, and Democrats don't understand how badly they're like facing down the barrel of a loaded gun going forward,
Yeah,
and they're not.
some of the most well-regarded pundits out there were saying that there was no chance. Trump had no chance, that he was going to lose votes and people were going to swing, but they were wrong.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Democrats are doing these things. Like, there had Kamala Harris had a very well-regarded photo shoot where she was like buying sneakers because black people love sneakers. I guess is what they're trying to say there. I don't know. This seems very racist and counterproductive to me, but they're going to double down on this girl. I said it before. The most diverse cabinet in history is going to introduce all these austerity policies. And, you know, how do you think that's going to go for like white supremacist recruitment?
Yeah, 4 more years. Next 4 years are going to be interesting.
Yes, I think I was going through my phone notes today for not for any sentimental reasons. I needed to find something, but I found like something I wrote my freshman year of college where I made all these really obnoxious predictions about, like Trump's going to start a war and get reelected, and a Democrat will narrowly beat the Republican in 2024. And I'm like, oh my God. It just goes to show how stupid it is to try to predict anything and do like alternate history or make these really like people always talking about the collapse and like what a post society. It's really like it might be fun sometimes, but it is very much like self-fellatiating yourself.
Yeah, Rome fell over the course of 225 years. So buckle up, kids. We're going to be in for a long ride.
We are in a depression. That's definitely true. An economic meltdown just does not automatically spell a societal collapse. We have them every 10 years now, I guess. You're just going to have to get your arms around that.
Yep. Well, that's all from me for this week. Thanks for listening, all. Tune in next week or sometime soon. We're gonna have a big one coming out. We're gonna have a whole panel and everything. It's gonna be exciting.
Yes, yes. Oh, we're not going to do an emergency episode for the Georgia election?
Oh yeah, we probably will. So
Oh,
stay
are we?
tuned.
I
We
was being
might.
sarcastic. No,
Yeah.
you're right, I guess.
No, if we find out the night of the results of the Georgia election, will we'll log on and give our 2 cents.
Yeah, it will really determine if Joe Biden is actually president for 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So hope you all look forward to hearing from us then. Again, feel free to give us recommendations and follows on Twitter, like this episode, so on and so forth.
So long.
So long.